الله أكبر الله أكبر
الله أكبر الله أكبر
الله أكبر الله أكبر
الله أكبر الله أكبر.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر
الله أكبر الله أكبر.
لا إله إلا الله
حقا وأبدا ودائما لا إله إلا الله. الحمد لله الحمد لله فاطر الوجود من العدم وجاعل النور من الظلم ومخرج الصبر من الألم وملقي التوبة على الندم. فنشكره على المصائب كما نشكره على النعم، ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الأكرم ذو الشرف الأشم والنور الأتم والكتاب المحكم خير ولد آدم الذي بشر به عيسى بن مريم ودعا لبعثته إبراهيم عليه السلام حين يرفع قواعد بيت الله المحرم. فنصلي ونسلم ونبارك على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. إن أصدق الحديث كلام الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد بن عبد الله وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة في الدين ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. أوصيكم وإياي بتقوى الله وحسن عبادته. All praise due to Allah, the most merciful, the most gracious, the most merciful. And peace and blessings be upon His last and final messenger. He who Allah guides will never be misguided, and he who Allah misguides will never be guided. We begin today's khutbah with a famous scholar. His name was Hatim al-Asam. He was in the 2nd century of Islam. And he was a very pious, righteous man and a very well-known scholar. One day he was talking to his family. And at this point in their lives, they were very, very poor, living day by day. So he goes to his family and he says, I would like to make the intention for Hajj. I would like to make the intention for Hajj this year. So the mother and her children begin to say, if you leave, who is going to take care of us? Who is going to take care of our family? Hatim al-Asam had one of his daughters. She came to him and she says, oh my father, leave. And don't worry, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of us. So Hatim al-Asam leaves, and a few days later, in the food that they had left behind by Hatim al-Asam had finished. And now the mother and her siblings come to the girl and they look what happened. Look at the situation that we are in. We have no money, we have no food. What is going to become of us? Who have you left us to? The girl responds so beautifully. She says, تركنا لحي رزاق لا يموت. Our father has left us, but the Razzaq, the one that gives true rizq, is always there. He will never die. A few moments later, a knock on the door happens. And it was a soldier. He has come to the door. And he says, Ja'far al-Mansur, Amir al-Mu'mineen, is here at the outside of the door. And he would like a cup of water. So the family says, water, that's the only thing we do have. So they offer him a cup of water. And Ja'far al-Mansur asks, where did you get this water from? From which house did you get it? They said, we got it from Hatim al-Asam's house. So he said, Al-Alim, the scholar? He said, yes. So he says, he takes the money, a pouch of money that was on his horse. He takes it and he throws it into their home. And he says, whoever loves Amir al-Mu'mineen, do like I did. And of course, the people that were with Amir al-Mu'mineen, if they loved him or they did not love him, they were going to do what Hatim al-Asam, what Sayyidina Ja'far did. Ja'far al-Mansur did, excuse me. So all of a sudden, bags upon bags of money were falling into the home of Hatim al-Asam. And now this family that was poor, on the brink of not having anything to eat, have more money than they can imagine. So this girl, this righteous girl, goes to the corner and begins to cry. And her family come to her. Say, why are you crying? We're rich. You should be excited. You should be happy. She says this profound line. She says, نظرة من مخلوق أغنتنا فما بالكم إن نظر إلينا الخالق. One look, 1 second. A servant, Ja'far al-Mansur, Amir al-Mu'mineen, looked at us for 1 second. We became richer than we can imagine. Imagine if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saw us. Imagine if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us rizq. How rich would we be? How rich are we? Why did I begin my khutbah in this manner, in this fashion? Sadly, many of us, if not all of us, are short-sighted. We see a specific situation and we act on that situation. And when we go through a trial or a tribulation, a difficulty, it impacts us negatively. To the point where we begin to question our own faith, we begin to question Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Begin to say, if there is Allah, then how is this happening to me? How am I going through this trial or tribulation, through this difficulty? Not noticing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam tells us something beautifully. All of the hadith are beautiful, but in this particular scenario, I want us to focus on what he said sallallahu alayhi wa Muhammad. He says, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الله يقول أنا عند ظن عبدي بي وأنا معه إذا دعاني. I am on the opinion of my servant of me. As if our opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dictates how He will treat us, how He will react to us. So the question that we must ask, فَمَا ظَنُّكُمْ بِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ? What is your opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Do you truly think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is intending to punish you? If that is your thought, then yes, it is a punishment. But if your thought that it is a trial for you to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then it will be an opportunity for you to come closer to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Umar ibn al-Khattab رضي الله عنه, he says, لو أنكم تتوكلون على الله حق توكله لرزقكم كما يرزق الطير تغود خماصا وتروح بطانا. If you had true yaqeen in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, true faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you would act the way a bird acts. It leaves the house in the morning in hopes for food and returns in the evening full. Do we have that yaqeen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or do we do everything, even if it is haram, to attain rizq? And when something difficult happens to us, Do we turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or do we turn away and say, oh my God, how is this happening to me? We begin to act sadly like children. We are grown men with beards, yet we act like children. How is this happening to me? And you're angry and almost yelling at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as if you are not accepting of the qada of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah reminds us in the Quran. He says, وَعَسَى أَن تَكْرَهُوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ وَعَسَى أَن تُحِبُّوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ شَرٌ لَكُمْ. We always stop there. Most scholars stop at that verse. Alas, you may like something that is bad for you, and alas, you may hate something that is good for you. But we forget to continue the ayah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. And Allah knows and you do not know. So you don't know the situation that you are in, if it's truly bad or truly good for you. But as a believer, you have yaqeen in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this feeds into the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He says, عَجَبًا لِأَمْرِ الْمُؤْمِنِ. Weird is the life of the believer. عَجَبًا لِأَمْرِ الْمُؤْمِنِ إِنَّ أَمْرَهُ كُلَّهُ خَيْرٌ. Everything in his life is khair. إِنْ أَصَابَتْهُ سَرَّاء شَكَرْ فَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُ وإن أصابته ضراء صبر فكان خيرا له. It says, weird is the situation of the believer. All of his affairs are good. Every affair of a believer is good. And the Prophet ﷺ differentiated between a believer and a Muslim, saying someone that has yaqeen in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, their situation is always good. Why? Because if something good happens, they're thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This good did not come from me. I'm not a genius. But this came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if something bad happens, they know that I should be patient. Because my patience is going to be better for me in this dunya and the akhirah. So what do we do? How do we overcome this? The first thing we're going to do is whenever a situation happens, whenever a difficulty happens, we do what the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam taught us. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, عن جابر رضي الله عنه قال إن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يعلمنا الاستخارة في الأمور كلها كالسورة من القرآن. Sayyidina Jabir used to say, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would teach us istikhara and remind us of istikhara. Istikhara is calling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if it was a verse in the Quran. And any one of us can go and find the dua al-istikhara. It begins, Allahumma inni astakhiruka bi'ilmika wa astaqdiruka biqudratik, and so on and so forth. And I'm not telling you to memorize this hadith. Print it out on a piece of paper. And every time a situation happens, pull out that paper. Pray 2 rak'at and read that dua. And ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whatever is best, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings it. Number 2, be kind to the people around you. The reality is, we don't know what our brother or our sister is going through. The reality is, they might be going through a difficulty. Their action towards you, the way they responded to you, may not be intentional. Maybe because of a difficulty or a struggle that is facing them. And that's why they're acting in that way. So give them husn al-dhann. Think highly of them. And say, you know, alas, they might be going through a struggle. Because more likely than not, they are. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, وَاللَّهُ فِي عَوْنِ الْعَبْدِ مَا كَانَ الْعَبْدُ فِي عَوْنِ أَخِيهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will support you as long as you support others. So let that be the third thing, the third piece of homework that we learn. That if you're going through a struggle, you're going through a difficulty, see, how can I help others? Yes, my situation is hard, but it's better than so many others. My situation is better than my brother and my sister. So why not I help them? And lastly, and the most difficult, is a sabr, is being patient. On the Day of Judgment, there's a hadith, it's a long hadith. And it goes in English that when the people come out of the grave, a group of individuals will go right to Jannah. And the malaika, hurrasul Jannah, they're standing in front of Jannah. Where are you going? لم تنشر لكم ديوان. Nothing, your books haven't been revealed to you. And you haven't stood in front of the scale. فكيف تدخلون الجنان? How can you enter the Jannah? They said, we were patient in the dunya. And did you not hear the verse, إنما يوفى الصابرون أجرهم بغير حساب? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward those of us that are patient without accountability. If you want to be amongst those that are, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala won't hold you accountable for any of your actions. Be patient when you face struggles and trials and tribulations. So they asked, how were you patient? كيف كان صبركم? And they responded, كنا إذا جهل علينا حلمنا وإذا ظلمنا صبرنا وإذا أسيء علينا غفرنا. They said, if someone was ignorant towards us, if someone was rude towards us, we were forbearant. We were kind to them. And if someone oppressed us, we were patient. And if someone does wrong by us, we forgave them. And the answer that inshallah we will all receive, قالوا ادخلوا الجنة فنعم أجر العاملين. He said, enter Jannah, for excellent is the actions for those who act. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be patient, allow us to enter Jannah. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. In this khutbah, we talked about having yaqeen in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we talked about the importance of having tawakkul ala Allah. And before we wrap up and talk about our homework for the week, two stories have come to mind. The first is a story of Umar, both stories are with Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. The first is one day Umar ibn Khattab was walking with his servant Yarfa. And they stop by a home and they lean on the wall of the house. And inside the home they hear a mother and her daughter talking. And this mother is telling her daughter, add water to the milk. We're in need of money. Add some water to the milk to increase the amount of milk that we have so we can sell more. So the daughter reminds the mother. It says, oh my mother, Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, he told us that we should not add water to the milk and we should not cheat people. And she says, وَأَيْنَ Umar? Where is Umar? How can Umar see us? He can't see us right now. Just add the water and do what I'm saying. The daughter refused. She says, وَأَيْنَ رَبُّ Umar? And where is the God of Umar? He's always watching. Umar ibn Khattab told Yarfa, tell me where this place is tomorrow morning. So the next morning, Umar ibn Khattab comes and knocks on the door of the house. And he says, I heard you last night telling your daughter to add water to the milk. And I heard what your daughter said. She is a righteous individual. And he looked at the mother and says, do not return to this action again. And he asked the daughter, are you married? And she said, no. So he brought his son, Abdul Rahman ibn Umar. And they looked at one another and they approved and they got married. So from this action of having yaqeen in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the girl having yaqeen in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Knowing that yes, Sayyidina Umar might not be watching, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching, and I have to have yaqeen in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That my rizq does not come by me cheating people. My rizq is from me being honest, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant me rizq. And the beauty of this story is not just there, that this marriage of Bay'atul Laban and Abdul Rahman ibn Umar ibn Khattab, they become the grandparents of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. The one that filled the dunya with adl, after injustice had spread, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz had filled it with justice. And it makes sense that a family that started in this way, that their children end up like that. And the second story to conclude before going to our homework. Umar ibn Khattab again was walking at night, and he passes by a mother with her children, and her children are crying. And Umar ibn Khattab says, Askitihum, get them to stop crying. He says, Inni ufattimuhum, I'm trying to get them to stop breastfeeding. I'm trying to get them to eat solids. So Umar ibn Khattab looked at the children and he realized they're so young. 6, 7 months old. Why? He said, Inna Amir al-Mu'mineen Umar ibn Khattab لا يعطي الرزق إلا للفطيم. Says Amir al-Mu'mineen Umar ibn Khattab only gives a ratib. At the time, the believers, every individual had a ratib, had a salary, a base income. And Umar ibn Khattab only gave a base income to those that are eating solids. So we try to rush our children to eat solids. Umar ibn Khattab tells her, stop what you're doing, I will talk to Umar ibn Khattab tomorrow. The Rawi of the hadith, he says, all night long we heard Umar ibn Khattab, we heard an aneen, a crying sound from Umar ibn Khattab, saying, how many children did I kill? And the next morning, he made a decision that everyone, the second a child is born, they have a salary. So that woman, because of the fact that she went through a difficulty, she had a challenge, a difficulty in her life, but she was patient and she put her trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not only was she rewarded in the dunya, but she was rewarded by every single individual that had a child will get a salary from that day forth. So realize, all of us realize that our actions can impact more than just ourselves and our families, but it can impact the people around us. Now, what is our homework? What are we going to leave today with, and how are we going to act differently? First and foremost, we need to sit with ourselves and reassess. وَمَا ظَنُّكُمْ بِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. What is our opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How are we going to have that paradigm shift? To look at every situation as khair. Every situation is good, the way a believer does. Number 2, if you're going through a difficult time, if you're struggling, be patient. And yes, it is difficult. Yes, it is hard. But Jannah isn't cheap. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ, and give glad tidings to those who are patient. Number 3, never forget the power of dua. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us, every Friday, so every week, at least once a week, there is an hour where any dua that you make, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept. So alas, your dua might be accepted. So make dua. We have a few hours before Maghrib. Make dua every hour. Alas, you hit that hour. And number 5, perform istikhara as frequently as you can. Leave your trust to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Leave your trust with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide all of us to the straight path. Allahumma hdina fi man hadayt. وعافنا فيمن عافيت، وتولنا فيمن توليت. اللهم اهدنا واهد بنا واجعلنا سببا لمن اهتدى. اللهم اهدنا واهد بنا واجعلنا سببا لمن اهتدى. عباد الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله العظيم يذكركم واستغفروه يغفر لكم وأقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر.